they've been dying
that
for
American
the last 25 years.
You might want to take down, by the way.
No, actually, if you love this country, if you're a real patriot, you'd have to hate this government.
You said America
and the
killed
war
like the worst terrorists in the world, more than Iran,
them.
dude.
Yeah. DC killed a lot more people than Iran did, and that's George W. Bush and Barack Obama and Joe Biden and Donald Trump. It has nothing to do.
Okay.
Dude, just all you can do is just interrupt because you know you have no point on your side. Anyway, Pierce, what actually
are there
matters
not mass
here?
graves in Iran?
Anyway, what actually matters here is that the calculation has been drastically changed and the incentives have been changed by Donald Trump, even since the 12-day war. Look, for the 12-day war to work out the way it did, really relied on a major piece.
Dave Smith said something on Piers Morgan's show that nobody has said on cable television in 25 years. He looked into the camera and said the United States of America is arguably the worst terrorist organization in the world if you look at the civilian body count over the last 25 years. And then he named names: George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Donald Trump. He put a body count next to each administration. Ben Ferguson lost his mind. The room went silent. And what followed was one of the most revealing debates about American foreign policy and the Iran war that you will find anywhere in mainstream media. So let's watch this in full, and I'll give you my complete thoughts on the other side.
Suddenly they're waking up and they're seeing five-star hotels getting blown up. And it's causing enormous uncertainty throughout that entire region, and causing enormous damage to the perceived business model of places like Dubai. So there are real-time consequences now of this within 48 hours of these strikes, which make it very, very different to anything we've seen before. Do you think this can it work? And if it doesn't work, where does that leave us all?
Well, if it doesn't work, Donald Trump has destroyed his presidency. Which I think is the most likely scenario at this point. And I don't say that with any, glee. I mean, I think that's really bad for the country. And I understand that this is kind of devolving into like a partisan fight, but look, I mean, the justification for this war is totally incoherent. It's actually worse than any of the wars in the global war on terrorism, just in terms of how incoherent the justification is. I mean, all of the wars were based off lies, but at least the lies kind of, I mean, at this point, it's like, I don't even know what, I mean, I guess Ben will just defend whatever war Donald Trump launches, but their nuclear program was totally,
taking out the worst
of course.
Terrorism
all right. You already,
that's a good idea.
I know, we've all heard the talking points. Okay.
Are you saying Iran is not the worst sponsor of terrorism? Like, serious question. Like, you act like you don't know that. You do realize that Iran fundamentally funds, trains Hezbollah, Hamas, and other terrorist groups.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yes,
yeah,
I know.
I mean, that's not like breaking news.
Can I just talk for a second since you already spoke?
Sure, but
like,
honestly, don't act like you're a smart guy. Like, you should know that. You're downplaying Iran's threat to the world.
Dude, shut up for a second. I've heard a million times idiots
saying
like
it's not
you who
true.
go on Fox News.
You're saying it's not true.
Dude, can I just fucking talk, dude? This is so boring. I've heard a million
the
Fox News.
Then.
Okay.
I go on CNN
one more
too,
time.
by the way. Okay, so like it's not just Fox News, buddy.
Okay, so I've heard the talking point a million times that Iran is the #1 sponsor of terrorism. It is something that the war hawks love to say. I have actually never once heard a coherent definition of terrorism and then a demonstration that they're the worst of it. The IDF is the worst terrorist organization in the region. Let's get real. The United States of America is arguably the worst terrorist organization in the world. If you want to look over the last 25 years, how many innocent civilians we've slaughtered. You're getting us into the neocon. Yeah, that's right. You're getting us into the neocon 7th war, which they've been dying for the last 25 years.
You might want to take down, by the way.
No, actually, if you love this country, if you're a real patriot, you'd have to hate this government.
You said America
and the
killed
war
like the worst terrorists in the world, more than Iran,
them.
dude.
Yeah. DC killed a lot more people than Iran did, and that's George W. Bush and Barack Obama and Joe Biden and Donald Trump. It has nothing to do.
Okay.
Dude, just all you can do is just interrupt because you know you have no point on your side. Anyway, Pierce, what actually
are there
matters
not mass
here?
graves in Iran?
Anyway, what actually matters here is that the calculation has been drastically changed and the incentives have been changed by Donald Trump, even since the 12-day war. Look, for the 12-day war to work out the way it did, really relied on a major piece of that puzzle, which was that Iran, for self-preservation reasons, showed restraint in their response. They called ahead. They let us know where they were going to target. They made sure they didn't kill any Americans. This time, once Donald Trump killed the Ayatollah, they offered through their Italian negotiators, they offered a ceasefire. Iran said no. Iran has now made the calculation that they simply can't let America come in and kill the Ayatollah and not respond, because then they'll just keep picking on them. Donald Trump already announced this was a regime change war with no plan. Absolutely no plan. As he has admitted, as Rubio has admitted, they have no plan for what comes next. And this is the scenario, I got to say, man, I hate to be vindicated like this, Piers, but this is the scenario that all of us were warning about since well before the 12-day war. That now you've gotten yourself into a situation, Americans are dead. I think Mr. Miller misspoke when he said 4 people are dead. 4 Americans are dead over there. Probably more to come. Donald Trump says more to come. We've had a couple Americans killed in Austin in a blowback terrorist attack that's happened already since then. And like, dude, the lack of wisdom here from the Trump administration, like, you have no idea what you just kicked off. There is absolutely no reason to think that this thing is not going to be a catastrophe, just like the last 6 theaters in the global war on terrorism. And by the way, you know, for just final one very quick last point. I'm sorry, Pierce, but then really, you know, interrupting me there a bunch. Let me just say one thing. For all the like supposed like pretend intellectuals out there, like the Gad Sads and the Sam Harris, who have.
Let's start with the question Dave Smith asked that nobody on that panel was willing to answer directly, because it is the most important question in that entire exchange. What is your definition of terrorism? And does the body count change depending on who is doing the counting? Because that is the actual argument underneath all the noise. Not whether America is evil, not whether the soldiers who served are bad people. The specific documented question of whether the standards we apply to Iran's foreign policy get applied consistently when we look at our own. The Brown University Cost of War Project has been tracking this for years. The direct death toll from post-9/11's military operations in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Yemen, and Pakistan sits at over 940,000 people, more than 432,000 of them civilians, not combatants, not enemy fighters, people who were home, people who were at markets, people who were at weddings. When you add the indirect deaths, the people who died because the wars destroyed their healthcare infrastructure, their water systems, their economies, the total climbs to somewhere between 4.5 and 4.7 million people and counting. And the Defense Department's official position on all of that has been consistent since 2001. General Tommy Franks said it directly, we don't do body counts. The most powerful military in human history counts every American it loses down to the name and the date, but does not count the people it kills. That asymmetry is the whole argument in 2 sentences. Ben Ferguson's response to all of this was to tell Dave Smith to take the American flag down. Think about who that flag is supposed to belong to. Not the people who make the decisions to send the soldiers, the families, the people in Texas and Kansas and Georgia who watched someone they loved come home in a box from a war that was sold on information that turned out not to be true. Ferguson told the man reading the body count to take his flag down, and Dave Smith told him directly, if you actually love this country, you would be furious at what has been done in its name. That is not anti-patriotism. That is the highest standard of patriotism. Caring enough about what America represents to be honest about when it has fallen short of it. The Iran war context makes this conversation urgent rather than historical. Operation Epic Fury began on February 28, 2026. By mid-May, 13 American service members had died, and over 400 had been wounded. 13 Americans dead in a war that Dave Smith warned about before it started, in a conflict that Trump himself admitted had no plan for what came after, that Rubio admitted had no exit strategy. Americans are dying right now in a theater nobody planned for, with a body count that is just getting started. And the people calling Dave Smith unpatriotic for pointing this out are the same people who were wrong about Iraq, Wrong about Afghanistan, wrong about Libya, wrong about Syria, every time. Wrong. And then there is a specific strategic point Dave Smith made about killing the Ayatollah that deserves to be heard clearly. He said the entire incentive structure changed the moment that decision was made. Iran, for its own self-preservation reasons, had shown restraint during the 12-day war. They called ahead. They warned where they would target. They made sure not to kill Americans. Once Trump killed the supreme leader, Iran made a different calculation that if they allowed the United States to kill their Ayatollah without a serious response, they are inviting an endless escalation where America keeps pushing because there are no consequences. Dave Smith warned about this before it happened, and then it happened. The point about so-called intellectuals like Saad and Sam Harris is sharp and correct. These are people who spent years on podcast circuits and speaking tours talking about how irrational and violent the Muslim world is, using the Muhammad cartoon controversy as their primary evidence. Dave Smith asked the obvious question they never addressed. If drawing a cartoon of Muhammad causes this kind of blowback, what exactly did you think would happen when you murdered a supreme leader of Shia Islam? Did anyone model that out? Did anyone in the Pentagon sit in a room and think about how the 160 million Shia Muslims worldwide would process the United States, killing their most senior religious and political figure? Or did the plan just assume they would react like no one had ever reacted to anything before? And the answer is visible in the outcomes. Dave Smith has been saying the same thing since before the 12-day war, before Operation Epic Fury, before the Ayatollah was killed. He said, "You have no idea what you just kicked off." And he was right. Ben Shapiro called Piers Morgan the Jerry Springer of political television for giving Dave Smith a microphone. The man who was right about the trap, right about the blowback, right about the absence of a plan gets compared to Jerry Springer for saying it out loud on camera. That tells you exactly who the machine needs you to ignore and precisely why you should be paying attention to what he is saying. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, hit the thumbs up, subscribe, and turn on the bell notification. I'll see you in the next one.